The bulldozer roared to life at dawn. Raymond Voss stood at the edge of the clearing, coffee in hand, watching the machine's metal jaw tear into the earth like it was nothing. And to him, it was nothing. Just dirt. Just rocks. Just an old crumbling structure that was standing between him and $4.2 billion. He didn't flinch when the first wall came down. He didn't flinch when the villagers gathered at the tree line, watching in silence. He took a slow sip of his coffee, checked his watch, and turned back toward his helicopter. He had a board meeting in 3 hours. 6 months later, Raymond Voss would be on his knees in the rain, in that same clearing, with nothing left. But we'll get to that. Raymond didn't grow up with money. He grew up with hunger, the kind that lives in your chest and never really leaves, even after the bank account changes. He was born in a rusting industrial town where ambition was something people mocked because they were too afraid to try it themselves. Raymond tried it. Raymond succeeded. By 32 he had his first million. By 45 he had his first billion. By 51 he had 4 of them, a private jet, a penthouse in Singapore, and a reputation for turning forgotten land into gold. He didn't believe in luck. He didn't believe in fate. He believed in leverage, momentum, and execution. Everything else was noise. So when his acquisition team flagged a stretch of pristine coastal land in a remote village called Ilokai, Raymond saw exactly what he always saw, an opportunity buried under other people's hesitation. The projections were staggering. A luxury eco-resort catering to the ultra-wealthy. Private villas, curated experiences, the kind of place that charged $30,000 a night and had a 2-year waiting list before the first nail was hammered. It was the project of the century. His project. There was just one problem. Right in the center of the development zone sat a small, ancient shrine. Moss-covered stones arranged in a circle around a carved wooden figure that nobody outside the village could name. The locals called it the Guardian. They said it had protected Ilokai for over 300 years, turned storms away, ended droughts, kept the village whole through decades of hardship. They tended it every morning. They left offerings. They spoke to it the way people speak to someone they love and trust completely. Raymond's project manager sent him a memo. Potential PR sensitivity. Community attachment to the structure is significant. Recommend we explore relocation options and community consultation. Raymond read it once, forwarded it back with 4 words typed in capital letters, "Find a way forward," and moved on to the next item in his inbox. The meeting with Lola Caring was not his idea. His local liaison had strongly recommended it, almost begged for it, saying that in this region, you did not skip the elders. Raymond agreed only because he had 40 minutes to kill before his next call and thought it might be useful to have a face-to-face on record in case anyone asked questions later. Lola Caring was 80 years old and walked without a cane. She sat across from Raymond in a simple wooden chair and looked at him the way very old people sometimes look at the young and powerful. Not with fear, not with awe, but with a kind of quiet patience, like she was watching a tide come in and already knew where it would end. She told him the history of the shrine without drama. Just facts, delivered calmly. She told him about the typhoon of 1961 that flattened every village on the coastline except Ilokai. She told him about the drought of 1987 that ended 3 days after the community gathered at the shrine and prayed together. She told him about a Spanish landowner in the 1800s who had tried to claim the land, demolished the shrine's original structure, and was dead within a year. His estate collapsed, his workers had abandoned him, and he had died alone in a house that flooded every time it rained, no matter how many times they fixed the roof. Raymond listened with his hands folded on the table. He nodded at appropriate moments. He was very good at performing attentiveness. When she finished, he thanked her for her time, told her that her community's heritage was deeply important to him, and said his team would be in touch about compensation arrangements. Lola Caring stood up slowly. She looked at him one final time before she walked out. "You are not the first man to sit where you are sitting," she said. "But you will remember this conversation for the rest of your life." Raymond smiled politely and checked his phone. Demolition began 4 days later. The shrine came down in under an hour. And then, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, Raymond Voss's world began to come apart at the seams. It started with his lead architect. She resigned without warning on a Tuesday morning, citing a personal conflict of interest. It turned out her grandmother was from Ilokai. She had not known until she visited the site. She left without collecting her final month's salary and sent Raymond a single-line email that said, "Some things are not worth the money." Raymond hired a replacement within 48 hours and kept moving. Then an anonymous tip surfaced online, detailed, documented, and devastating. Environmental violations from Raymond's previous development in Batangas. Illegal land drainage. Protected species displacement. Someone had held onto this information for a long time and had chosen right now to release it. Two of his key investors called within hours of each other. They were stepping back, they said. Just temporarily, they said. Just until the optics improved. Raymond's jaw tightened. He told his legal team to find the leak and shut it down. Then Mara posted her video. She was Lola Caring's granddaughter, 24 years old, a schoolteacher, and someone who had never gone viral in her life and had no intention of starting. She filmed herself standing in front of the rubble where the shrine used to be. No script, no production, just her voice, cracking at certain points, steady at others, telling the world what had happened to her village and what that shrine had meant to the people who had tended it their entire lives. 12 million views in 4 days. The comments were merciless. The hashtag #ProtectIlokai trended globally for 72 hours. Journalists flew in. A documentary crew from Europe made contact with Mara within a week. Two prominent international environmental organizations released statements. A petition to revoke Raymond's development permits gathered 600,000 signatures in 9 days. And then Raymond's son called. His name was Daniel. He was 17 and had always been quietly proud of his father in the way sons are proud of powerful fathers, distantly, cautiously, with an asterisk. He had seen the video. He had read the comments. He had looked up the shrine and its history on his own. "Dad," Daniel said, and his voice was so flat and so careful that Raymond felt something move in his chest. "Did you know what that place meant to them before you tore it down?" Raymond said, "It was a business decision, Daniel." Daniel didn't respond for a long moment. "I think you need to actually answer my question," he said finally. Raymond didn't have an answer. Not one he could say out loud to his 17-year-old son. Daniel didn't call again for 3 weeks. The legal injunction came through. On a Thursday, Mara had connected with a team of land rights attorneys who discovered something Raymond's acquisition team had missed, or buried. The original land title carried a disputed heritage clause that threw the entire purchase into question. Construction was frozen pending a full legal review. Raymond's net worth dropped by $900 million in 5 weeks as investors fled and brand partnerships quietly dissolved. He fired 2 executives. He had his lawyers send Mara a cease and desist letter. The internet detonated. The cease and desist became the story. Every major outlet covered it. Mara stood outside the temporary shrine the villagers had built while they waited, flowers, candles, the carved figure salvaged from the rubble, and she read the legal letter aloud on camera with perfect composure and said, "This is what happens when you speak up. You get threatened. We're still speaking." That video got 20 million views. Raymond watched it alone in his penthouse at 2 in the morning. He watched it twice. Then he searched for the colonial-era landowner Lola Caring had mentioned. He found the historical records. He sat with them for a long time. He picked up his phone. He called his assistant. "Cancel everything," he said. "I'm going to Ilokai." He arrived without lawyers, without cameras, without a prepared statement. Just Raymond Voss, in the rain, walking through a village that knew exactly who he was and what he had done. Lola Caring met him in the clearing. He didn't extend his hand. He didn't reach for charm or composure or the careful language of corporate apology. He simply stood there and said, "I was wrong. I knew what it meant. I chose not to care. And I'm sorry." Lola Caring looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Then she nodded once. The shrine was fully restored within 6 months. The land was placed into a legal community trust, protected permanently from development. Mara went on to become one of the most recognized land rights advocates in Southeast Asia. The luxury resort was never built. Raymond Voss rebuilt parts of his empire. But he never spoke about Ilokai in interviews. Not because he was ashamed, but because some reckonings, he said, belong only to the person who lived them. The shrine stood. The village remained whole. And Raymond Voss, for the first time in his life, understood the difference between owning land and respecting it.